You'll need to score an ID if you want to get through that gate. Head back to the old town entrance. You'll need to score an ID if you head back...
A most fascinating opponent, wouldn't you say?
What did you make of it, Doc?
Well, everything it said seems feasible enough. It's true all UGs feature high-level AI these days. Given enough time to adapt and learn, a neural AI could certainly become able to comprehend speech. Then, with the right interface, speech and conversation will be possible.
But what about it having actual intelligence? John Searle disproved the viability of the Turing test back in 1980. In other words, just because something talks like a person doesn't mean it's really thinking. It could just be following some program designed to make it seem as intelligent as possible.
I'm impressed. You seem quite knowledgeable in this field.
I had a pretty memorable chat with an AI once, about 10 years ago. After that, I did a little reading.
Ah, yes, of course. The Patriot AI. I heard of this.
Was it actually intelligent, or just programmed to pretend? I'm still not sure.
I suppose it depends on how one defines intelligence. For example, many term chess-playing AIs and such as having sectional intelligence. Some in the field believe that sentience or self-consciousness is a necessary part of the definition. When you ask if this UG had intelligence, I suspect this is more your criteria?
Yeah, of course. Then you could ask, how do you define sentience exactly? And on and on and on.
Indeed. These terms can indicate a wide variety of meanings depending on one's understanding. Perhaps it is less important to ask if the AI was intelligent or not than to ask how did the AI operate. After all, labels are useful only when they further pursuit of the truth. And that, as you well know, is the goal of all science.
Sure, Doc. Thanks. I guess. Doc, that wolf UG, you think it's possible to repair it?
Why do you ask?
Just curious.
Well, normal brain tissue degrades starting approximately 3 minutes after the heart stops. With neural AI, however, the spin of the internal electrons is retained even after electric power is cut. Assuming there is no damage to the actual AI hardware itself, yes, repairs should be possible.
Okay.
Whatever state it is in, I would certainly appreciate it if you could bring it back with you.
I'll see what I can do, but the mission takes priority.
Of course. I would never suggest otherwise.
But let's just say this thing is what it claimed to be. You think there are other intelligent UGs out there? Because if that's the case, I've got a feeling future missions are only gonna get rougher.
Indeed. Dozens of UGs chatting away on the field would be enough to drive anyone to distraction. Neural AIs are not von Neumann computers, keep in mind. Structurally, they are closer to human brains. Hardware and software are indivisible. The learning data can't simply be transplanted to other AIs.
So it can't be copied or backed up either.
Normal UGs must be taught individually. This entails streaming provisional, audiovisual, and body sensor data until it's ready to be shipped out. This process can be sped up by increasing and improving processing speed. But I have no data on how long it would take to train such an AI how to converse. I couldn't even tell you if there's a training program established for such a thing in the first place. If it is indeed a prototype, it likely learned and honed its skills via the process of trial and error.
So it's unique.
I cannot say with certainty, but I have not heard of any UG like this before. I would imagine that it was telling the truth when it called itself an experimental prototype. There may be others. Or perhaps it's the only one in existence.
Glad we narrowed that down, then.
The enemy cyborg's ID information is embedded into the memories in their left hands. Most likely that's what the gate is scanning for. Depending on your ID, you would only have clearance for certain gates.
Convenient.
No more fumbling around with a pocket full of card keys. But you must cut off a left hand before it explodes, or else the ID will be erased.
And then it's back to square one.
Doctor, you have anything more on these cyborgs?
Only what we went over in your briefing, if you had been paying attention. Standard military-grade cyborgs. MCFC integrated carbon nanotube muscle fighters. Impressive response time and power yield when focused correctly. Most will likely possess extrasensory skills as well. Infrared vision is almost standard these days. They can function without breathing for short periods of time,
Okay. Nothing I didn't already know.
Not all cyborgs you face will be the same, of course. You may notice a range of different capabilities. It all depends on the manufacturer. Muscle fiber and neurotransmission technology is advancing all the time. Of course, you have the very latest science has to offer. A typical cyborg is no match for your equipment.
If you do say so yourself.
No, I realize combat is about more than the equipment. Situational awareness, predictive ability, nerves. One must determine a course of attack or defense and execute on a moment's notice. Reaction time is key. Cyborg enhancements do not change that.
Agreed. Hey Doc, I'm curious. Can I recharge off any cyborg? Even a non-military unit? Not that I ever would, of course.
A pedestrian cyborg? I very much doubt you will encounter any of those on this op. Besides...
Against the rules of engagement, I know. Like I said, just curious.
In theory, then. No, I would doubt very much that you could. Even from those that opted for complete body replacements due to injury or illness, you know. Though I have heard of some very wealthy clients who wanted to fight the effects of aging.
Doctor?
Ah, yes, your question. No, extracting MCFCs from pedestrian cyborgs is unlikely. Most non-military enhancements use polymer muscle fiber that is a generation behind yours. Carbon nanotube would be a bit much for anyone who wished to lead a normal life, you know. And polymer systems can be powered by rechargeable electric batteries. Organic muscle fiber, which allows extraction of nutrients from the bloodstream, does exist, but it requires artificial blood for sufficient power output. This so-called white blood requires regular dialysis and was mostly phased out once cyborg technology became mainstream. True, some use cultivated muscle tissue to take nourishment from the body's natural bloodstream. But such systems are more regenerative medicine than cyborg technology. I'm sure you'll agree. Of course, natural musculature or no, if the body is equipped with a ceramic bone structure...
Can't get energy from non-military cyborgs. Got it.
Well, one moment. I have more...
Thanks, Doc.
So, as I was saying, there are many differences between pedestrian and military cyborgs.
You're still on about this.
Now, first and foremost, military cyborgs are generally full-body conversions.
You mean as opposed to partials?
Yes, as opposed to just grafting on an arm or leg where a myoelectric prosthesis would suffice. As I have said, for the general public, these full-body replacements are quite rare. Quite rare. Only in cases of extreme injury or illness, generally. Perhaps a few eccentrics who wish to live longer. In any case, most pedestrian cyborgs are no more than an artificial limb or two. We call these partials.
Doctor, I know. I just said that.
Partials enhancements are not designed to meet the rigors of military use. A pair of synthetic arms attached to an organic body cannot match the power of those on a full cyborg. Total body conversions also armor the entire soldier against stray ordnance and minor injury. This is why wounded contractors most often opt for the works rather than simply replacing the lost limb.
I hear it's why most of Maverick cyborgs had it done, anyway.
Of course, there is the rather dramatic change in appearance to consider. Civilian life as a cyborg can be, well, complicated, as I'm sure you can attest. But for the field, man and metal, capability beyond the natural human body, it has a functional beauty.
Beauty or beast?
Both lie in the eye of the beholder, which brings us to the senses. Machine implants can also restore lost vision and hearing, and with added sensitivity, as you know. Such options have become standard in most military conversion packages, along with pain suppression and dampening less useful emotions, similar to how SOP operated.
Yeah, no matter how hard I'm hit, it doesn't really hurt.
Of course, everything has its limits. Do not let your high threshold for pain make you reckless.
Understood. Doctor, about my pain threshold. It doesn't hurt exactly, but I can still feel it. It's not painful, but it's still pain. It's hard to explain.
Well, your nervous system is still fully intact, of course. It would be dangerous for you to be entirely unaware of your body taking damage. Instead, your nerves are controlled such that pain is no longer so unpleasant.
How do you mean?
Take epinephrine, for example, or adrenaline, as you might know it. This hormone makes it harder to feel pain, yes? Your implants work using a similar method. Yet, for all we now understand of the nature of pain, much of it remains a mystery.
How so?
Well, why do we feel pain? Evolutionarily speaking, of course, to signal external injury or internal sickness. If the body is threatened, pain notifies the brain so it can take steps to ensure survival. In other words, pain has a clear and logical purpose. But in certain cases, pain can drive more unconstructive behavior. In situations where fight and flight are both still options, one might simply break down crying or drop to the ground and begin writhing about. This would appear only to diminish one's chance of survival, not increase it, yes?
Maybe there's some other factor at play.
Well, the most common theory would link pain with the societal nature of humanity. If no friends are close by, then experiencing pain might indeed reduce your likelihood of survival. But if allies are near, these expressions of pain serve as a plea for help. Thus, you are more likely to live. Fear of pain might also discourage one from entering a dangerous situation in the first place. Whatever the reasons, the data clearly shows that survival rates rise directly with sensitivity to pain. The converse is also proven. Those less able to feel or express pain have a lesser chance of survival. So, mankind has evolved as a social animal, and in the process, pain has become more pronounced, more visceral.
A little pain never hurt anyone, huh? But if pain is there to ensure survival, well, what's that say about the future for us cyborgs?
As a transhumanist, I do not believe all evolution must follow the exact method Darwin posited. Cyborg technology is still survival of the fittest, after all. Just in a new form. You should be proud of what your body has become. It is the culmination of great achievements in science.
Me? I had nothing to do with it. The credit's all yours.
Well, yes. I should be proud as well.
Doctor, about my fuel cells, the electrolytes. Do all military cyborgs use the same type? I'm not gonna run across anyone, you know, incompatible with me, am I?
An excellent question. Your fuel cells, like any other, operate much in the same way as a typical battery. They do not need replacing after a single use, of course, and they do not require recharging. They do, however, require a fuel source.
That much I know already.
Yes, then. There are several different types of fuel cells. Phosphoric acid, MCFC, molten carbonate like yours, solid oxide, and so forth. Each type can be further divided into classes, each which runs on its own electrolyte material. However, all current military cyborg MCFCs run on the same one electrolyte.
That's good news.
Why all the same electrolyte, you ask? The answer lies in the catalysts that help make up your carbon nanotube musculature. It was breakthroughs in researching these catalysts and CNT manufacturing that enabled large-scale production.
Breakthroughs that happened after all the data the Patriots were covering up finally leaked.
It could not have happened without your help, Raiden. Science owes you a great debt. And I do as well. Working on your body has been quite educational. My apologies, Raiden. I realize we never concluded our discussion on carbon nanotube muscle fibers.
Didn't we?
CNT drove major innovations in the field of cybernetics, not to mention unmanned gears. As I'm sure you are aware, Walker-type UGs require numerous linear actuators in order to function. Previously, organic polymers or cultivated muscle cells were used to that purpose. But the advancement of CNT technology allowed for comparable power in a far more compact package. This meant the same size UGs could be equipped with even greater firepower. Take the redesigned Metal Gear Ray, for example.
They took all the space the old artificial muscles filled up and stuffed it with weapons.
Precisely. Of course, UGs have improved in many ways, all to keep pace with cyborg advancements, you know. After all, the original Metal Gear program was designed to unite infantry and weaponry. As an evolution of this concept, the UG is now in direct competition with the cyborg. And the cyborgs already have an advantage with their maneuverability and smaller size, as you well know. Of course, UGs are not dependent on the skills of a human host.
Long story short, watch out for UGs.
Well, yes, basically. Cyborgs have matched unmanned gears in many respects, but then UG tech advances every day. Do not underestimate any you might run into.
Copy that.
Doc, all the UG talk got me thinking. Why don't we see more manned gears?
Ah, yes, with a pilot. The bipedal tanks and such things, I must confess I have not followed the field closely as of late. But then, who has? Since Metal Gear A, all the advances and the funding in mobile artillery has been UGs.
So why is that?
Well, UGs take many more forms. Aerial drones, treaded tanks, armored transports. And they are perfect for the 3D work. Jobs too dull, too dirty, or too dangerous for men. True Metal Gears with a pilot and nuclear payload were huge and very expensive. They were not practical. It turned out the greater need was for smaller, cheaper units, deployed more easily and in greater numbers. So the field narrowed in on this aspect of gear design, an all-terrain link between infantry and artillery. But even then, the UG models were more popular. In most cases, they simply made more sense.
But aren't there situations where you'd want gear-level power, but also a human pilot there to make decisions? UG AI has gotten better, but it's still terrible at handling anything unexpected.
But Raiden, this is exactly the role the cyborg has taken. On the manned gear, any advantage of a cyborg in offensive power comes with a matching increase in size. This makes it so large as to no longer be practical for most infantry missions. Conversely, the smaller models are so close to cyborgs that, well, what is the point?
Cyborgs are smaller, cheaper, more nimble.
Precisely. Perhaps soon we will see the cyborg take the place of the UG, as the UG has done to the manned gear.
What, with wings? Scooting around on wheels?
Why do you laugh? It is the logical next step to have a human brain integrated into a tank or a plane.
Now you're getting into some B-grade sci-fi territory, Doc.
Oh, but it is all quite possible, I assure you. Just consider the possibilities. A humanoid frame for everyday life, yes, but the brainstem can be easily extracted and inserted into whatever chassis best suits the mission. So, yes, I suppose the paradigm could be flipped on its head. As UGs become smaller and smarter, they could begin to fill the cyborg's role. They will come to resemble them more and more in form and function, no doubt. I suppose at some point they would no longer be UGs, but androids. Glorious!
One thing about fighting these cyborgs, Doctor, it's strange in a way.
Oh? How do you mean?
I can slice them to pieces, and with all their pain and emotion suppressed, they don't feel a thing. At least against SOP troops. You never forgot they were real people. But these cyborgs, it starts to feel like I'm taking on unmanned gears. Robots. Not living, breathing men.
Intriguing. Tell me, does it help assuage the natural feelings of guilt? There is no reason to avoid this topic. Man has wrestled with it as long as there has been war. Guns were a huge step, of course, as it became easier to take a life, physically and mentally. Then, destroying a tank or airplane, where you no longer had to see your enemy's face as he perished. Eventually, remote-controlled drones further distanced the killer from his victim, much like the video games. I suppose cyborg soldiers could be seen as yet another step in dehumanizing death.
Maybe. I do feel like I could forget I'm taking the lives of real people here.
Well, under normal circumstances, you wouldn't necessarily be taking their lives, strictly speaking. So, as long as the brain is supplied with oxygen, a cyborg can survive most anything, even if respiration is disabled. An emergency supply of liquid oxygen would remain in the bloodstream. The cyborg would enter a state of hibernation, yes. But so long as the brainstem were retrieved intact, it could be attached to another body and revived.
That's how the two Gemini survived.
The Gemini? Ah, yes, the twin cyborgs from the motorcade.
But Desperado cyborgs are different.
Physical self-destruction is a fail-safe security measure. In any case, it is unfortunate that Prime Minister Nmane was human. Perhaps if he had been a cyborg, he might have survived as well.
We'll never know. Besides, a robotic prime minister? I doubt anyone would accept that. Inside or outside the country.
Yes, I suppose fear always does trump logic when it comes to the general public.
Exactly.
Raiden, something I meant to ask in our last chat. Did you consider opting for emotion restraints? I can understand one might be leery of the procedure, but it is all perfectly reversible, I assure you. You could implement them for a mission and then do away with them as soon as it was over.
I'll pass, thanks. To be honest, I have a problem with the whole concept.
And what is that?
Decisions are about more than just logic. Lose your emotions, and you risk not being able to relate to how normal people see right and wrong. Your conscience could end up different, warped, or who knows, maybe gone altogether. Boris agrees. That's why no Maverick cyborgs are allowed to use emotion restraints.
An understandable perspective. There is some data to support your belief. MRI scans have isolated the brain activity associated with choosing between good and bad. Mostly in the dorsolateral prefrontal and central orbitofrontal cortexes, to be precise. But this entire area of the brain is known to process emotion, not logical thought. It would seem to support the idea that emotion indeed plays a role in values-based decisions.
Well, there you go.
But another argument can be made, that it is emotion that sparks human conflict in the first place. All the great wars, all the great atrocities, would they have happened if not for emotional decisions?
Maybe not. But we can't just ignore the worldview of most of the planet. We don't exist in a vacuum here. To most of the world, a PMC operating on its own guidelines would be like a terrorist organization. They'd say we used brute force to impose our strange values on others. And they'd be right.
Yes, well, you have a point.
Abuse of emotion restraints has become a hot topic. Suppressing fear tends to boost aggression, which has led to cases of excessive violence.
True, achieving the right balance is difficult.
But on the other hand, it makes it possible to intentionally make people more aggressive. Even a child can become a bomb just waiting to explode.
Yes, it is very likely that Desperado is employing just such a technique.
Hey Doc, Kev mentioned a lot of the high-ranking military were brain-jacked. Can you give me any more on that?
Well, it is not my area of expertise, but I have working knowledge of such matters, yes. Much of it is similar to cybernetics, you know.
Makes sense. A cyborg's frame is reading signals directly from the brain.
Indeed. Brainjacking employs nanomachines to stop these signals from reaching a normal body. The pilot can then substitute their own signals and control the victim. They can govern all motor movement, but not the victim's thoughts. It is not mind control. More like a puppet. The subject will not move on their own. The pilot must send control signals.
You can't just implant an idea like a hypnotist.
Precisely. You must manipulate them directly. Now, there are several methods for doing this. The pilot can act out the desired behavior and send the resulting electric impulses in real time. For example, the master raises his right hand, the victim does the same. The master says, Arschgeige, and the victim does as well.
Yeah, I get the idea, Doc.
Another method is to set an AI in control as a victim. Less convincing, but less labor-intensive. The AI can access the subject's memory center, at least, to recognize acquaintances and the like.
But anyone looks really closely, and the gig is up.
Mimicking behavior from surface memories is difficult, you know. Quite difficult. AIs are still very poor at replicating more subtle cues, such as the manner of speaking. As a result, often the victim can barely pass as a human, much less any certain individual. With the current tech, a passing acquaintance might be fooled, but not a close friend. Not for long.
Good. The idea of AIs controlling people is bad enough. At least I'll be able to tell if it happens to someone I know. So Doc, if brainjacking can access someone's memory, can't we basically see everything in their past?
Well, that would depend on precisely what you mean by see their past. The brain does not store every single detail the senses take in, you know. It records highlights, further simplified into a highly symbolic form, all to lighten the amount of data. We know how the brain reacts to what it was previously aware of. We can even gauge the emotion provoked. But reproducing memories? No. I've seen little progress in research to this area.
But say we directly linked my brainstem with the nanomachines of a brainjacking victim. Couldn't I read their memories?
There have been attempts at such things, but it is not so simple, you know. The connections between successive memories make up one's identity. If you disturb that... For example, say we remove all memories you have of being yourself and replace them with my own.
Yeah.
You would feel you were the great Dr. Wilhelm Vogt. You would behave very similar to how I do. However, what if instead you kept your own memories and we added mine to them? You would feel you were both Raiden and Wilhelm Vogt. Suddenly your memories would not lead one to the next. You would be confused, disoriented, without a sense of which man you were, and thus how you should behave. So, you see, the very concept is not practical for most military applications. In trying to read an enemy's mind, you would, in a sense, become that enemy.
You wouldn't know which side you were fighting for.
Precisely. Cyborg memories are completely different, of course. A cyborg's visuals are often monitored by outside parties, much as we do with yours. This visual data can, of course, be recorded for later analysis. All with full video and all in the holographic memory in their left hands.
So you can just sit back and enjoy the movie?
Well, it's not always recorded, mind you. And even then, there's the issue of locating the desired data buried inside all that video. You might need to comb 10 days of recordings from 10 cyborgs to find a single person or document. That is 100 days of work. Even replayed double speed, 50 days.
Can't you automate the search?
Of course. You can flag any time a certain face appears or if certain words are said. But the process is not perfect, and it still requires time, you know. Besides which, often one doesn't know what they are searching for until they find it. But should you ever require a search through your memory, Raiden, I would be happy to assist you.
Yeah, for a modest fee, I'm sure. I have to say, Doc, it's almost scary everything nanomachines are capable of. SOP, brainjacking.
Oh, but the cyborg is capable of even more.
You think?
I do. With nanomachines. You know this name has always bothered me, nanomachine. They are much more than smaller versions of existing machines. So much more. You cannot just take a motor and make it all teeny tiny, you know? A human chromosome is 10 micrometers long, roughly. A nanometer is 1/100th that length. These devices must be crafted at the molecular level to work at that scale. It is far more to do with molecular biology than mechanical engineering.
Okay, Doc, but where are you going with it?
It is, however, now possible to create proteins that simulate viral functions, effectively fooling natural human cells into taking on a wide range of less conventional characteristics, boosting strength or resilience, or even regenerative ability. Not to CNT muscle fiber levels, of course. After all, these molecules and proteins can only make use of the materials at hand. That is to say, the atoms that naturally occur within the human body.
I'm not sure I follow. Are you saying cyborg tech is already more advanced than nanomachines?
Well, not necessarily. But the potential for future growth seems much greater, does it not? Natural means can only rearrange what is already there. Boost one ability too far, and you might take away from another. If the human race is to truly evolve, I believe we must shed this DNA-driven organic flesh and exchange it for something far more functional. Cyborg technology seems better suited to this purpose, at least in terms of military applications. But then, who knows? A revolution in nanotechnology could be occurring even as we speak. Progress rarely takes the form we expect, you know? Such is the great frustration and glory of science. The enemy cyborg's ID information is most dependent. No more but...
And then...
The most dependent. No more but...
And then...
Roger that. Save complete.
I thought we'd get back to our little history lesson. What do you know about the Patriots?
I know that they were behind everything we talked about before with the SOP system. People thought these 12 guys controlled world politics and the global economy from the shadows.
And they were right. Except there weren't 12, and they weren't guys, or even human. They were massive AI networks.
All the better to gather information on a global scale, or censor it if they wanted. They'd manipulate factions to keep wars raging, all while selling arms to both sides. The PMCs made billions too, of course. SOP was the Patriots' masterstroke. They could control battles directly, down to each individual soldier. The system might even still be around if the AIs hadn't all been destroyed.
I'm impressed. You know your stuff. Not many people have even heard of the Patriots. More than when they were active, but still, not many. Almost no one knows they were AIs, or that they're the real reason SOP went away.
Well, the few that do know aren't going to talk about it publicly. Even the world leaders.
Especially the world leaders. The people would panic, assuming anyone believed them, which they wouldn't. You can find speculation on the net if you look hard enough. Some of them get pretty close to the truth, but the stories never made it into the mainstream. Just another conspiracy theory.
I'm not surprised. It's a little hard to believe, you know? It just sounds crazy. When Kevin briefed me about all this in orientation, I thought it was some kind of BS detecting test.